Okay, so this lesson is going to be about rounding numbers, and I am going to start with rounding to the nearest 10. So let's start with rounding to the nearest 10. So you have to remember, when you round to the nearest 10, most important thing is when you round to the nearest 10, the number must end with just 1 0. Because if you write 10, see, it always ends with 1 0. So whatever you do, you have to end that number with 1 0. So let's do some examples. If I had an example such as, let's say, 44. So the best way to do this, because the only thing that is going to change is the last digit, well, the last digit is going to change to 0, and you have to decide whether the digit 2, this second digit here, is going to either stay the same or it's going to go up. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to focus on the last digit. So I'm going to put a box around this last digit. Now we're going to check if it's up to half of 10. So we're looking to see if it is 0 to 4 or 5 to 9. If the number that you have at the end here is 0 to 4, then you're going to keep this number the same. But if the number you have here that I have this line around, if that number is 5 to 9, we're going to increase this number here. So if we look at this example, this number is 4. It's 0 to 4. So we're going to put a 0 right here, and we're going to keep this 4 the same. Now, what if we had another example like 68? For example, we're going to start again. We're going to look at the last digit here. We put a box around it. We can put a line around it. So now we're going to check. So you can see here that this number is more than 4. So it's from the 5, it's between 5 and 9. So that means we're going to put a 0 here, and we're going to increase this 6 to 7. Let's do another example. What if we had something like 83? So we're going to start off by putting our box around 3. We can see here that this is from 0 to 4. It's not up to 5. So that means we're going to have a 0 here, and then we're going to leave this as an 8, because the number on the right side, the last number, is not 5 or more. We're going to leave this 8 unchanged, which means that we're going to round down instead of rounding up. Now we'll do some other examples. What if I had a 3-digit number? Let's say, for example, we have something like 458. Okay, we're going to do exactly the same kind of things that we did. We're always, because we're rounding to the nearest 10, we're going to go ahead and put a line around 8. You can see here that this is 5, this is more than 5, or is greater than 4. If it's greater than 4, that means that the next digit around it, so this digit right here, is going to round up. So what we're going to have here is, we're going to have 0 over here. We're going to round this up to 6, and then we're going to keep the 4. Because remember, we're running to the nearest 10, so it's only the 10th digit that is going to really significantly change, or is going to make, we're going to see a change with the number in the 10th digit, or in the 10th place. What about 734? We're going to start off by marking off the last digit. This is 4. It's not up to 5. Remember, the only time you're going to round up is if you have 5 or more. So this is not up to 5, so we're going to replace this with a 0. Now we're going to round down, so we're going to have our 3, and then we have 7 here again. Okay, let's do one more example. What about 289? Okay, we start off again. We put this line around 9. We can see here that this is 5 or more, so which is it's greater than 4. So what that means is we're going to round up. What are we rounding up? We're going to round up the number that is right next to it. Don't make the mistake of rounding this number here. It's not important. We're always going to round the number right next to the number that we are trying to check. So this is going to be 9. This is going to be 0, and then our 2 stays exactly the same. And then we'll do one last example of this type. Let's go with something like 536. Okay, we're going to start off by marking the last number out, and we're going to use this number to decide what we're going to do to this number. So this 6 right here, you can see that it is 5 or more. It is greater than 4. So because it's greater than 4, we're going to round up. So what we're going to have here is we're going to have 4, and we're going to have 0, and then we just replace our 5. Do you notice something very unique here? Is that every number ends with a 0. That's why we say we're rounding to the nearest 10. Now let's go ahead and talk about rounding to the nearest 100. Nearest 100. Now we have to be sure, before we start talking about nearest 100, the number must end with 2 zeros. You must always have 2 zeros at the end. So we're going to start with 3-digit numbers. The first thing we're going to do is, let's get a number. Let's go with 463. Remember, when we rounded to the nearest 10, we only looked at the last number. Now, when we're rounding to the nearest 100, we're going to look at the last 2 numbers here. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to ask ourselves one simple question. Is this number 50 or more? If it is 50 or more, then we're going to round up the number that is right next to it, right here. So you can see here that 63 is, you can see that this is 50 or more. So we're going to put 0, 0 here, and we're going to round to 5. Let's try another example. Let's go with 649. We're going to start off by check the last 2 numbers. We're going to look at them to see if these numbers are 50 or more. You can see here we have 49. It's not up to 50. So we are going to round down. So that means that this is going to stay at 6, and then we have 0, 0. Let's do another example. 854. So we're going to start off by marking our last 2 numbers. We look at this. This is 50 or more. So we're going to round up this number right next to it. So this is going to be 9, and we always end with 2 zeros. This is extremely important that you remember that we have to end with 2 zeros. Okay, the last thing we're going to do, and last example here, we are going to try a number such as 708. So for 708, we're going to start the same way we started every other question. We look at the last 2 numbers and we mark them off. And so we look at the 08. 8 is not up to 50, so we're going to round down. So that means 7 is going to stay the same, and then we have 0, 0. Okay, now we're going to do the same thing with 4-digit numbers. 4-digit numbers. So let's start with 4,861. All right, so we start off by marking out the last 2 digits right here. As you can see, 61 is 50 or more, so it is greater than 50. So you can see here that because it is 50 or more, we're going to round up this 8. So we're going to put a 9 here, and then we have 0, 0, and then the 4 comes down. You notice here that if you look at the place value, the only digit that we're either going to change or keep the same is the digit in the 100 place. So you have to remember that with place value. Let's do another example. Let's try 7,326. Okay, so we'll start over by looking at our last two digits here. And we can see this is 26, it's not up to 50, so we're going to round down. Round down simply means that this 3, we're not going to increase the number in the 100 place. So we have 0, 0, and then we keep our 7. And let's do one more example of this type. Let's go with 8,918. Okay, we're going to go over to our last two digits, and then we can see that this is not up to 50, so we round down. So we're going to have 0, 0, 9, and then we have 8 over here. So 8,900. Now let's do the last set of examples. We're going to round to the nearest 1,000. Nearest 1,000. Okay, so we're going to do this with just 4-digit numbers. So we're going to start with a number like 4831. Now for the nearest 1,000, remember, the first thing we need to remember for the nearest 1,000 is we have to end with 3 zeros. Our number must end with 3 zeros. So we're going to look at, because our number must end with 3 zeros, we're going to look at the last 3 numbers. The last 3 numbers, let's look at these last 3 numbers. Now we're going to check if it's 500 or more. If it's 500 or more, then we're going to round up the number in the 1,000 place. So we can see this is above 500, so this is going to be 5, and then we replace all these 3 numbers here with zeros. Let's do one or two more examples. Another example we have is 6,451. So we're going to start off by marking off the last 3 numbers right here, and we're going to check if it's up to 500. If it's not up to 500, we round down. If it's 500 or more, we're going to round up. So this is less than 500. So this is the digit we're going to try to work on. This is going to be 6, and then we have 0, 0, 0. Let's do 2 more examples. What about 8,521? So we start off with our last 3 digits. You can see this is 500 or more. So what you're going to do now is you're going to round down. So this is going to end with our 3 zeros, and then we are going to have, we're going to round up because it's more than 500. So we're going to round up. So this number 8 is going to go up to 9. And our last example is 3,279. Let's start off by marking off our last 3 digits. 279 is not up to 500. So what we're going to do is replace this with zeros, and we're going to round down. So this is going to be 3,000. So this is the easiest way to do rounding. We talked about rounding to the nearest 10 for 2-digit, 3-digit, and 4-digit numbers. Then we looked at rounding to the nearest 100 for 3-digit and 4-digit numbers. And finally, we did rounding to the nearest 1,000 for only 4-digit numbers.